On the 6th of November, we set off and I joined the UHI Murray College Edinburgh trip, art trip, and these pages reflect what I saw, my thoughts on some of the artists, and it was truly magical. And then I ended up, so I had 3 nights in Edinburgh, Wednesday to the Friday, Wednesday night, Thursday night. On Friday night I went to London, 2 nights in London, and then I came home past Yorkshire. And Edinburgh was fantastic, but London was just out of this world. I reference some of the kind of takeaways for me and kind of what's relevant or, you know, interesting. Adi Adesiina, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, he's actually an Aberdeen artist, and he was shown at the Edinburgh printmakers. And he's a printmaker, but he had used step ladders and doors to form a sculpture in the middle of the room, and that was interesting how he'd used the step ladder to represent himself. Daniel was at the Scottish Gallery. He's a blacksmith to trade, but he'd gone and done his fine art degree as well. So he's now using metal. These are all metal. And he's, you know, using his forge and his hammer and all his blacksmith skills to produce these very soft sculptures, and you know, with lots of beautiful human contours, and I was very inspired by his work. Jimmy Fitzpatrick was a surprise for me. I was very drawn to these pieces in the City Art Centre. Not what I would have thought, but being visually, you know, physically in the space, and I was just very drawn to them. I think the simplicity and the naivety, simplistic approach to the painting and the sculpture, and then also the kind of emotional elements that they really hold and transmit was just kind of spellbinding almost. Guadalupe Maravilla at the Talbot Rice was just connected with this work on several levels. From the making side of it, he's made all of these totems, very ritualistic resemblance of his heritage, but also from his attitude towards healing, and how when he had his cancer diagnosis he turned to alternative healing sources to provide that healing. And now he is he went on to be a practitioner as well, so he's taken it to a different level. But I could relate to many aspects of him and how he was using his work now. So he's built these very shamanic totems that are healing, that have healing powers and energies, and he uses within his practice. So that was really interesting. Going to the London, we were, the Tate Modern Turbine Hall was the first port of call to see the Mira Lee, and these were large sculptures with just rebar frames and draped with builders material, very easily accessible, cheap materials, but the proliferation of the, you know, the repetition of the object over and over again had such a lot of impact and really made me think about repetition. And so she made them, and then they were taken to this turbine area where they were dipped and covered in fluid, and they were submerged over a period of time in that, and that's what made them go from white to this colouring. Then they were taken out from underneath the turbine and they dried, and then they were hung up. So it's a continual exhibition, like the number of exhibits being hung will expand over time. So it was just really, it's just really good to see like a bigger space, how you would utilize it, how you would use your maybe one form and repeat it. And I could really see my cocoon in that space, like sort of iterations of my cocoon being suspended. And the wonderful thing was with my cocoon was that I wanted the airflow to move it, but of course because it was sun is so in such a small space, so low to the ground, many things it did it a little bit, but it didn't do it as much as I would have wanted. And these ones moved with the airflow of the humans below. And then I went off and explored on my own. I was very drawn to this Alberto Zerino terracotta circle with the glass and the lead above. The Leonore attunes, the suspended materials. And then we went off to the Hayward Gallery to see the He Yang, and that was just mind-blowing. There was just, she'd filled the gallery. I think there was 4 or 5 floors of like her work. It was just amazing. But fun, and household items, repurposed, reused. Duplicate, you know, like there was many iterations of the same object over and over. And then there was these surreal objects that had handles, and yes, I just wanted to pick them up and move them. And then that did actually happen. There was a performance piece with all of them, and that was just brilliant. These are her take on lacquer work, but a very cheap and accessible way to do it, just all cuttings of wood and wood varnish. And so that's something I want to explore. Her and her team had taken 2 years to learn the practice of weaving and straw work, and there's a whole floor full of these sculptures, which you know, some, you know, like people would go into and wear and move and perform in. This was the sound kind of lampshade. It was a very busy studio. There was lots happening, and there was a projection with sound, and you sat in 3 chairs underneath this, and the sound just enveloped you. It was just amazing. Lots of household items repurposed. This is a sink, and it's got the Venetian blind in front of it. Lots of Venetian blind work. And she used it to divide the spaces, but also to project on. And I really liked the projections on it. I thought that was really inspired, and it brought me back to how my own blinds had projected the shadows onto my walls at Laverick Road. I went to see Tracy Emin at the White Cube, and that was very emotional. I connect with Tracy in the fact of, you know, she had her cancer diagnosis, and I've really watched her since, how she's portrayed her body since then. But these were quite harrowing. There was a lot of trauma, and very disturbing. Her lack of face in all of the works, even her sculptures. She seems to have a very, it's almost like she had a distaste of herself, or some kind of dislike. But yeah, the colour palette, the blue, the red, the white and the black, was very powerful, and couldn't help but be moved by them. These pieces were big. These were large-scale paintings, but there was also very small ones as well. And you can't deny her knowledge of the human form. I feel, you know, this leg appears quite a lot, and it's beautifully portrayed, I feel.